Welcome to second semester of phonetics. We're going to start right away by looking at the class webpage. If you go to the home page of the website, go to phonetics. You'll see Introduction to Phonetics 1. Here's 2. Click on 2. That brings you to the index for second semester. And so far we've got 28 items. Item number 1, where it says course description, also includes the syllabus for the class. We're going to be building it up as we go along. We've only got the first week up now. So you need to follow that week to week to find out or to confirm the assignments given in class. Eligibility for the class, you need 1 semester of Introduction to Phonetics to qualify to be in this class because it is advanced, challenging work. Without that background, I think it would be really, really difficult, though others are welcome to audit if you like. And going over the introduction, we've already said students who have successfully completed 1 semester of an introductory phonetics course, others by permission only if you have some special circumstances. The course is highly recommended for anyone planning to do advanced work in phonetics or linguistics. It's a serious but friendly course. So we do really solid work here, but we have a lot of fun doing it. And like last semester, this course will also be video recorded and made available to the public on Taiwan University's OCW, Open Courseware site. The textbooks we'll be using are these 2. First of all, Peter Ladefoged and Keith Johnson, A Course in Phonetics, 6th edition. This is what we used last semester. Everybody should have it already. If you took phonetics last semester with me or the previous year with Professor Feng Yizhen. We're going to have a second textbook for the course by the same main author, Peter Ladefoged. It's Vowels and Consonants. We'd like the 3rd edition. I've only brought the 2nd edition today. The 3rd edition should be available from Cranes. Make sure you have it by Wednesday. Wednesday is going to be our Vowels and Consonants Day. Instead of going over this textbook in class, you're going to be responsible for reading 1 chapter a week yourself and then writing a summary on the content of the chapter, focusing on the parts that are new to you. If there's parts that are really, really familiar, you just don't need to spend a lot of time going over them. You can skip those or just write a sentence or 2. Concentrate on the new areas, the areas that are new to you, and also areas that you have questions about. If something is not clear, make sure you put that at the end of your summary and then bring it up in class. Every Wednesday, almost the first thing I'm going to ask you is any questions on this week's chapter in vowels and consonants. Have your question ready, write it out at the end of your summary, and then ask it right away so we don't spend time just flipping through a book. Okay? And in addition to writing a weekly summary of a chapter of this book, you also need to write 2 questions for each chapter. And you write them as though you were a teacher trying to test a student on the material in that chapter. Or in addition, you can also, like I said, ask questions about things you don't understand. Or there's a 3rd possibility, questions about things that you've thought of during the week that you're wondering about, related to the course, especially to this book, but general questions as well. Something related to what we're doing. Write them out in the summary. You can bring them up in class, and I really encourage that because usually it benefits everybody. They often will have a similar question or they'll be interested or curious about what you've been wondering about. And we'll either answer it in class or the TAs and I will answer it on paper. But I prefer to answer them in class so more people can learn about it. So, weekly summary, 1 chapter a week. They will not be given in order. We're not going to go according to the order in the book. The reason for that is we're not going to do heavy-duty acoustics until Chapter 8. We're starting with Chapter 6 in A Course in Phonetics, and acoustics doesn't come till Chapter 8. But this book starts very early on acoustics. And we've already I think we've learned quite a bit about acoustics last semester. I don't think it was thoroughly digested, and I didn't really intend it to be because it was too much, too early. But we will be going into acoustics in depth this semester in Chapter 8. So I've moved the chapters, at least some of them, on acoustics till later. Some of them may still come before we get to Chapter 8. And I will just say, I'll explain it as best I can, but we'll have to wait till chapter 8 before we make the whole story clear, okay? So just have that kind of in mind, that if you start getting into things that are too heavily about acoustics, you can ask questions and I'll do my best to explain, but you may need to wait till chapter 8 to get the full explanation. So don't be intimidated by it. Just say, we'll let it go for now. We can come back to it later. But other than acoustics, anything else we should clear up as we go along. The other things, there should be no problem. This book is actually intended for people who are not majors in linguistics. So although it's quite heavy on acoustics, it's quite light on things like IPA symbols. So they don't even introduce IPA until quite late in the book. And that's something where you are much stronger. You already know IPA, at least for English. And so you will feel that parts of it are really too easy for you, while other parts are quite challenging. However, overall, students' reaction to the book has been very good. They said it was really fun. A lot of them said that's the first book, the first entire book they finished in the Waiwanshi. The first entire book they finished, and they felt so proud. And they said, my gosh, it took me a whole semester to read one book. What about all those other books that I want to read from cover to cover? But never mind, you will get through the whole book. You'll feel really good. You will learn a lot. Another really nice thing about it is it reinforces things you've already learned in this book, and some of it may be kind of hazy or fading away. This book will help reinforce it and make it more solid. So in many ways, this is a really, really good companion volume for the course. Okay, so one summary a week with 2 questions. Have your questions ready on Wednesday morning. In addition, we will still ask you to hand in a summary of your class notes every Monday morning. That's the first thing we'll do on Monday morning. Organize your class notes. Make sure that you PDF them so your symbols don't come out as mojibake. Everybody remembers what mojibake is. Okay, it's a wenzisala. That will happen unless you PDF your file. Make sure all the symbols come out correctly. We'll collect that on Monday. So that is standing work that we have every week. You have 2 written assignments a week. There will be additional work, but these are standing assignments that you need to do every week. Those are the 2 textbooks. Both of them are available at Wenhe at Cranes. You should all know where that is. And here's our description. The course is a continuation of Introduction to Phonetics 1. And if you've taken a different phonetics course, you're also welcome in the course. The primary goal will be to finish Ladefoged's course in phonetics, starting from chapter 6, which is airstream mechanisms and phonation types. Everybody remember these stress patterns? We went over them lots of times last semester. So make sure you do not say mechanism, okay? Nobody say mechanism, or I'm going to scream. All right, so no mechanism, it's mechanism, mechanism, mechanism. And it's not stressed here because it's a noun compound, a compound noun. Airstream mechanisms, airstream mechanisms. Remember that now, okay? And phonation types is also a compound noun. So don't stress types, don't stress mechanisms, and when you do stress mechanisms, make sure the stress is on the first syllable, mechanisms. And we're also going to go through the material in Ladefoged's and Disner's vowels and consonants. In addition to the usual submission of class notes on Monday, every Wednesday you'll read and submit a brief summary of 1 chapter of vowels and consonants, along with 2 questions from the chapter a week in this sequence. Okay, this is the new part. And at the beginning, we're going to go in order, but after that, it's going to jump around a lot because it's going to jump around to things that we're already more familiar with. We've gone over a lot of things about vowels and consonants last semester, so we're going to jump towards the end of the book. The first 3 weeks, chapters 1, 2, and 3 in order. And you can see 11, 12, 13, 14. There's a chunk in order towards the end. And then in April, we're going to come back to chapter 4 because that talks about acoustics. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then we're going to finish the book, 15 and 16. Okay, this is all clear so far? Practical exercises in English pronunciation will be assigned as time permits, with emphasis on consolidating past progress and identifying and fine-tuning areas left for improvement. A number of web assignments will be given, and students will get more practice in using Prat and other speech tools. We're going to do a lot more with Prat this semester. Students are expected to take careful class notes, including on pronunciation corrections. Even if it's somebody else's corrections, write them all down. Write all of them down. And then organize them, because usually if someone makes a mistake, most of the rest of the class probably has a similar problem. When students say, I want a clear formula about how you give grades, and this is a big problem in Dai Yingwen, they complain a lot. And I'm sorry, I don't have a formula for measuring attitude. Can any of you measure that with a number? I can see your attitude. We all are sensitive to attitude. Even animals can see attitude, as I mentioned before. So if I see your attitude is very jiji, you're really into what you're doing, you're working hard, you're going the extra mile, that of course will get you extra points. And how much progress you make. So if you already start out knowing everything and then you don't make much effort, you don't get extra points for that. But if you started out kind of in the middle, but then you really surged ahead, that will of course get you extra points. So that's about all I have to say about how we're going to calculate the grades. My biggest concern is being fair. I try very, very hard to be fair. And I do it, I give you credit for anything at all I can, and I push it towards the positive rather than trying to find how many points I can take off. So that is as best as I can explain how the grades will be calculated. As I said, the syllabus will only be posted, in most cases, 1 week at a time. So we have only the first week here. So today we've taken care of, while we haven't quite finished taking care of the class list, we may have to still finalize some details. And talked about the textbooks. And 2, what we're going to do next is we're going to share 3 observations that you've made over the winter break about language. Okay, I told you at the end of the semester, anybody who comes back, that we would do this the first class, and we will do that today. And after that's done, we will start reading Chapter 6 of Ladefoged Johnson's A Course in Phonetics, and that's the plan for today. Any questions at all? Anybody? We're all okay with it? So everybody, if you wrote it down, if you made some notes about your language observations over break, and I reminded you over Facebook, I hope everybody remembered, we'll just go in order. Still say your names, although with a smaller class, it's a lot easier to remember names. Still give your name, and then share your observations. I may give you feedback. I'll go, oh yeah, that's right, and then I'll get excited or something like that. And the rest of you can also give feedback. You can participate, raise your hand and say, yes, I've had a similar experience, or actually, I think it'd be better explained in this way. Maybe someone you think didn't interpret the data the way you think. Makes more sense. Okay, so everybody clear? And everybody take notes. You may find some really interesting stuff. I generally take a lot of notes when students are talking about their observations. Okay,
Wendy, the first observation I had, most of it from my mother, and the first one is Chinese. Fe and he. She cannot distinguish between fa and hua.
Okay.
And the second is from my uncle. He said free as flee.
Say it again.
Free. And he said flee.
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 With F?
With L. With L. The R and turned into a L.
Flee.
Yes.
For 3 or free?
Free.
For 自由.
Yes.
So he says flee.
Yes.
Okay?
And the third one is the O and R, like molding. And my mother said molding, and I cannot understand what she was talking about.
Okay, I didn't catch it all completely either. Can you?
It's molding.
Mm-hmm.
And she said molding.
Okay.
It sounds like molding.
Yeah. That's a really good one. That's an important one, because that seems to be another change going on in Taiwan Mandarin. I hear it less often with m, but it's really common with f. How do you say Buddhism? Jerome's the only one who says it the traditional way. I want to hear everybody say the word for Buddhism. We're going to go around the room just quickly. You don't have to focus on each one. I just want to hear how everybody in the class says the word Buddhism.
佛教
Louder?
佛教
Yours is halfway. You done?
佛教
Okay.
佛教
Again. Ha, you're the only one.
Because I learned it in elementary school that when the was followed by all, we should add u
Right.
between them.
So it was conscious learning,
Yeah.
and you now consciously make it.
菠菜
Yeah.
or 婆婆.
But I don't think anybody has trouble. Does anybody say bow tie? No. P, or for example, 破掉,没有人说破掉. Right? But with f, it's different. And it's also 就是频率很低的一个音. There's only 佛教的佛. There's no other, as far as I know, at least there are very few, if there are any, words pronounced 佛. But now, nearly 100% of the people in Taiwan say 佛教. But the original pronunciation was, listen, 佛教, 佛教, right? 佛教. 你们听了会不会有点陌生? Isn't that funny? Because it's not just you, but even Xi 老师, he said it too and he caught himself. But that's how he says it when he's not thinking, 佛教. It sounds very funny to my ears because I learned 佛教. That's the 课本音. But in Taiwan, it's changed to 佛教, nearly 100%. So that may be connected to it or not, Wendy. 可能有关系,可能也没有关系. It might be just your mother's own quirk. But we have that pattern with a different initial. So that one's very interesting. Okay, do you have any more? That was 3, that was enough, but did you collect any others? Okay, that's fine. 3.
5, but I left my notes.
Oh, well, that's okay. You completed the assignment. 3 was very good. Okay, Annie?
I'm Annie, and I went to a workshop in January, and there's a professor coming from British and
From England.
And
British is an adjective. Everybody watch that. From Britain. You can say from Britain, but we don't usually say it. From the UK or from England. England is only part of the UK, but from the UK, if you're not sure, maybe it was Scotland or Wales, or if it's from England, you can just say England. From the UK, from England, okay?
and he said issue instead of issue.
Okay.
And the second one is
Probably issue, not issue. Issue.
issue. Yeah. And another professor is has a Chinese English. He said what is going on instead of what is going on.
Okay. From Taiwan?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you tell him, stop, it stops? No. You didn't tell him? Why not? Okay.
And the third one is from Taiwanese and from my cousin. And he told me that when you are, he said when you want to open a door, you can say 怕亏 or 怕亏亏 or 怕吼亏亏亏 and it means different 就是打开程度不一样的时候会用亏亏亏跟亏亏亏来分，可是在中文里面你不会说打开打开开跟打开开开。
That's a really good one. In Minayu, they have these triplets. For example, yeah, that's right. Hong, hen, hong, hen, hong. How do you say in Minayu? Ang, ang, ang. Yeah. So you have triplets in Minayu. A lot of people study these because they're so fun. They're so interesting. But I hadn't heard that one with a verb like that. But actually, it's an adjective. So open it until it's very open, sort of. It's like an adjective. That's a really good one. That's very interesting. Okay, that was 3. Any more? All right. As for issue, this is a really hyper-correct pronunciation. I call it hyper-correct or extremely conservative pronunciation. In British English, it is normally issue. Yeah. Some people say issue, but my British teacher tells me 他会起反，他有点反感. He says, "Oh, it's terribly important issue." You know, 他就觉得太正式了一点. So that's not the usual pronunciation according to my British teacher. It's issue, the same as in American. Okay, and there are other words that rhyme with it. For example, tissue. It also sounds funny to his ears, he tells me. Okay, good.
I'm Sylvie, and I don't know that we have these
Yes.
assignments, but I do have some experience that in this winter vacation I found out that I have a different accent with my grandparents.
From
From my grandparents.
Grandparents.
From my grandparents.
Oh, grandparents.
Grandparents.
Yep.
And that my grandfather said, do as chopsticks.
Right.
Chopsticks. And I say D. So
Uh-huh.
that I didn't realize that we actually speak a different accents for so many years because we live together every day.
Because you just understand it and don't notice it. It's just such a normal variation that in the past you probably just 反正就是这样讲的. But now I think your ears are sharper than they used to be. Where are your grandparents from originally?
大约.
And do they have anything else in their pronunciation that's unusual? 猪肉的猪也是，对不对?
We didn't say that. We don't say that word very much.
Okay.
But we have a pronunciation much more similar than that in Yilan.
Oh, so it's a little bit like Yilanqiang.
Yeah. But we moved in Taipei for several years, so they kind of changed their accents. So I don't know the original accents because
Okay.
they already changed.
How do they say 黄色的黄? Do you know?
I say
Right. Do they say too? The Yilan accent is
Now I'm not that sure, but
Okay.
we say mui and samui, so that's for soap.
Samui. Okay, so I think that's still some Hanji of the Yilanqiang. Listen to them more when you go back and see if you can find more words and how much is left from their Yilan accent and how much they've changed to more standard Minanyu. That's really interesting. And do they say tu, you said for chopsticks, or tu?
They say
Tu, not tu.
no.
Okay, because in my host family many years ago, they say tu. It's not tu, it's tu. Both for 猪肉的猪 and 筷子 is tu. So look at their lips when they say it to make sure.
Do with a glottal stop after it.
The point is not the glottal stop, the point is lip rounding. Because we don't have the sound either in English or in Mandarin, right? 国语也没有，英语也没有。Most people's 闽南语也没有。Most people in Taiwan, yeah. 哪里？金门. Yeah, I think from the more northern part, yeah, that's right. And my host mother had it in any case. I don't know if Jinmen is the only area. So can you confirm that, Sophie? You do, yeah. Okay, so Jinmen is one place. It may not be the only one. 这是一整个系统. So the next time you visit your grandparents, listen carefully for words pronounced with, words, there's a group of words. They don't all have the same endings in Mandarin. So 猪肉的猪, 然后那个筷子, 还有很多来去的去. Right, 来去的去. In 一般的闽南语是 ki, right? But they say ku. And it's not ku, it's ku. So look at their lips when they say those words. 看它的圆唇的程度多少. Because we will probably hear it as u because we don't have 我们只认识 u. 可是可能是 ku 跟 de 等等. Okay? It's a great observation. Do you have anything else?
That my cousin is learning Chinese right now because he's 3 years old, and we found out he has a Taiwanese accent of Chinese.
Okay.
So he said 吃饭 instead of 吃饭. And we try to correct it, but it seems like it's not possible because he doesn't want to.
Where do you think he got it? His
From
parents?
my grandparents.
His grandparents.
From my grandparents, because he's a son of my aunt, so he lived with a 外省人. So he doesn't speak Taiwanese at home, but he visits us once in a week. But he learns 吃饭 instead of 吃饭.
Huh. But he doesn't have that much time around people who speak like that. Why do you think he picked it up? Does he identify with the people who speak that way? Is he close to his grandparents, for example?
Or I don't know the situation at their home. Maybe they don't tell him to 吃饭 every day, but in my place we will announce this activity before 吃饭. So maybe this is the only time he hears that.
Uh-huh.
But it's really unusual that he catches this phrase from someone who he only meets once in a week.
It is. That is really interesting. Follow up on that. See if you can see what happens with his accent. Because such a small child, you'd expect them just to pick up Mandarin like everybody else. Because a three-year-old will obviously copy what they hear. And he can do it. It's not that he's 不是说没有能力，然后就用一个比较容易的发音，不是。There's something going on. That's really interesting. Okay, anything else?
And I have a little cousin. He's his brother, who is less than about 11 months right now, and I spoke French to him. And I don't think he understands, but he found out it's a new language that he never heard of. So he has a surprised face.
Ah, isn't that interesting? I just read an article yesterday on the internet, and somebody remind me to post it if I forget, about very, very young children infants being able to tell the difference between two languages, especially children who grow up bilingual. And it says that they rely partly on duration of vowels. They can tell that this language has different lengths of the segments than their other language. So very, very young children, infants, can tell the difference between two languages. So I bet it was really fun seeing his reactions to this new language.
Because he was staring at me for about for minutes, and
Just kept staring at you.
yeah,
Yeah, and then listening to you pronounce it and watching your mouth.
and the action is like I've changed into another person that he's never known of.
How interesting. Isn't that interesting?
But this reaction doesn't show when I speak Mandarin Chinese or Taiwanese, which he's already familiar with. But with English and French, especially French, because we don't have that much French program on TV, so the action is more exaggerated.
That's really fun. That's so interesting. I can remember my nephew, long time ago. I wanted to teach him Chinese because I was already learning Chinese then. And he thought it was really funny too. And the first thing I taught him was 看一看. He went out through the house, 看一看, 看一看. He thought it was so funny. So I had a similar experience. Yeah, that's great. Anything else? 3 is really great for somebody who didn't know about the assignment.
I think that's all I can have right now.
That's excellent. Thank you. Okay, Amy?
Recently, I just found out that when in Kinmen, when we say 喝水, we say 淋水. But then in Taiwan, I think you don't differentiate from 淋得.
Mm-hmm.
So they just say 淋得even if it's water.
That's traditional, because I was told this when I was learning Minaiyu long ago, that in the past you did not drink kaishui. You just didn't drink water. If you were thirsty, you drank tea. So even if you were drinking water, you still say limte.
And I learned that. So if it's been boiled already, then you say 淋得. But if it's like water that's like 保特瓶水, we say you don't use 得.
Oh, I see. So kaishui is de.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's traditional.
And then other one is that okay, for those that know me, don't say it. What does mi dai mean? Mi dai. Mi dai.
Sorry, I don't know it.
Okay, most Taiwanese probably don't know it because it's something that in Kinmen we say. It means 干嘛做 when somebody's calling you, like it's like 咪呆你冲啥你咪呆
What do you think that comes from?
I'm not
虾
sure.
米虾米的米吗
I don't think so.
or 米是物件
I think it's from sort of like 物件
because 虾米的米也是物件的米
I know that Honghu also has this word.
咪呆 yeah, but then
They say 必呆.
but we
Oh.
say 咪呆
Yeah, they say 必呆.
That's sort of like what's up.
yes, it's like when somebody's calling your name and you say what, and
How
then
interesting. Okay.
let's see. I also found out that we have a lot of different pronunciations for a lot of Taiwanese words. For example, 铜板. In Taiwanese, I think it's 银嘎啦. Is it? 铜板. 银嘎啦. Yes, but then, we say 驴.
Louis.
Yes, from the old coins, they have like a circle in the middle. They have a hole in the middle. We say 驴. 几驴.
就是那个钱，就是通钱，通宝是不是？那个叫什么？呀，通党律。哦，铜，党就是铜。哦
When you're counting money, 驴, 几驴.
Interesting. And so you still use it? Okay.
Yes, we often say 驴 instead of 银嘎啦.
Okay.
And then for 学校, but then we say 欧等.
哦，学堂。
Yes.
Okay.
And then 刚刚有说猪，这是 d 跟 d 不一样，还有鞋子，围啊。
喂啊。
But then 袜子是我，对，我们是 b. We often have that sound. And then 番薯，安子。
安子。
那番薯，那个地瓜粥 ，How do you say？ 安子么？
地瓜粥。
安子么？
和
We say 么 I think it's from 粥米这个字，米。啊，你们会说粥的字，所以我们会说么加么。And then
good.
哦，你要去哪里？你要去丢。对不可丢 So we say 么 and 可 and 丢。
Good.
And then 谁的那个人是谁？梁。梁。
Say it again.
梁。
梁。
梁。And then 一间，对，一间房间的间。一间。
一间。
还有住哪里？像你问一个人他住哪里？徛丢位。徛丢。
徛是站吗？
也站，就是站哪里？然后还有扫地，我最近才发现说小金门，他们有一个很不一样的说法。那扫地通常是念扫头卡，还会念扫的。
扫的。
对，扫的。然后
Okay.
And then I saw on the news like on the title 的标题，it was about the 最近樱花季，and then so 他们要去赏花，然后有那特餐可以吃，可是因为位置不够多，所以有些游客吃不到。那他吃不到会直接用那the Taiwanese word 口跟一个无，的假薄。So it's like 很长的标题会混一些台语的字。
We call that code mixing. That's been popular for decades. 几十年. Yeah, it's been really more and more popular. And also English and Japanese all get mixed in.
And I think that's it for mine.
很丰富. Very good. All right, we're going to start over again at the beginning with the people we missed.
I'm Bella.
Bella.
I heard a woman who speaks almost always Taiwanese. She said 春剪 instead of 春卷.
How does she say it?
春剪.
Uh-huh.
And-
春剪.
Yeah, and she wanted to say 春卷.
Okay.
And the second thing is, I took the Kaohsiung MRT and I heard the 广播 and it says 巨蛋. In Taiwanese it still says 巨蛋, but I heard locals they say 大了灯. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's a literal.
And some people are discussing this in MRT and they say it should be 股能. And some people say 我来补能.
But they call it dua.
大了能. 大.
What's the second? I can't hear the second one clearly. Say it slowly.
大了能就是大的蛋.
Oh, lip.
对
Okay.
大了能.
Say it slowly.
大了能.
Good. Now it's very clear. I'm sorry. I need to hear it slower.
About this, when the Kaohsiung MRT was established, at first they used 大了能, but they found the company found that it's too weird.
Oh, so?
So they changed it to 股能. But 股能 sounds like all.
Yes.
So
就蛋.
so after they changed it to 巨蛋, because we may speak Taiwanese with mixed with some Mandarin Chinese if we don't have such word in Taiwanese. And for the Hakkanese, they originally used 鸡蛋.
Just 巨蛋. Yeah.
鸡蛋. But after a while they changed it to 巨蛋 also.
Oh, because it sounded funny in Hakka.
Yes.
And right now the MRT says 巨蛋 in Mandarin.
Then, you will hear 巨蛋 twice and followed by Kaohsiung Arena.
By
It should
Kaohsiung
be-
Arena in English.
It should
That's
be
right.
Chinese, Taiwanese, Hakkanese, and English.
So we
But
have two
for
巨蛋and one
巨
English.
蛋, you will hear 巨蛋 twice.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, 巨蛋.
Mandarin, 闽南语 and Hakka.
Yeah.
And then English. That's 4 announcements. I bet a lot of people are learning Hakka the way they never have before in the MRT. It's pretty effective because you hear little children repeating, right? They repeat the English, they repeat the Hakka. That's interesting because this is the very first time I ever heard that because I've been to Kaohsiung many times and I take the MRT almost every time and I've only heard 巨蛋. And I thought, here we are in Kaohsiung. And one thing that feels really good every time I go to Kaohsiung is when I get on the MRT. 那个闽南语好溜好到底. It feels really good when I go there. You have that feeling too? It
It just sounds so mechanical.
出声音. Exactly.
Robot.
I feel that too. As soon as I go down there, you feel this is my language. I'm so comfortable with this language. This is what we speak down here. And that feeling just is really warm. I love that. And people say, well, nobody takes the MRT in Kaohsiung. But I do. But
It's because there are only 2 lines in Kaohsiung and it's not so convenient because many stations are in the 市郊 or it's not so into the downtown city.
visitors love it because it's not just me. I've talked to many people who take the Gaotie to Kaohsiung, and they always praise the wonderful system. You get off the Gaotie straight to the Jieyun. You don't have to go out of the building. You go straight there. We really love it, but none of us are from Kaohsiung. Okay, that is interesting. So, that's the first time I heard it. I love that. That's really cute. It sounds more like 闽南语. Yeah, that 股能 sounds terrible, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, good. More?
I had only 2 observations. Yeah.
That was very good. Next.
I'm Vivian. My first observation is I have a niece. She is about 1 year old, and she often say only her names or instead of saying I.
Okay, she says.
She says.
So she refers to herself by her name. I used to teach my daughter that way. My father found it was strange. I go, like, does Nani want to eat? He says, do you always talk, have her talk in the third person? But I guess a lot of kids do it here. I bet they're copying their parents. Do you think?
I think if we say you, she wouldn't know it is her. It is she.
Yes. You've all had this in Yugai, haven't you? About how, it's Deixis. words that refer to people, different people, like the speaker or the listener, or here, there, those terms are very difficult for a child to learn. So like when you say to a child, for example, 你不要, they'll go back, 你要, 你要. They want to say 我要, 我要. Because it's very difficult to change the person according to the speaker. For children, they have to learn, they have to 转换. It's not straightforward, but if you use a name, it's always the same. That's what you're thinking, that's your explanation, right? Yeah, very good. Yeah, Carol.
I have a similar, actually, to my own experience. Because my dad say when I was young, I used to say 抱他 because that's how my mom and dad talk about me. They say 他, 喂他. And I thought that's me, so I say 抱他.
Exactly, exactly. And you still remember that.
Oh, it's not that I remember that because my dad always repeat that. It's very embarrassing, but that's a very good example.
You were probably only 1 year old.
Yeah, I guess so.
So not many people remember back to when they were 1 year old. But that's a really good story. That's a good story. Same kind of thing. So Deixis, it's D-E-I-X-I-S, Deixis. It's really, really difficult to learn. Okay, anything else?
And I heard some Italian English, and they pronounce the R English is a trio, not approximate.
Okay, so really, ridiculous, really ridiculous, something like that.
And sometimes they also pronounce to to wear, they pronounce to wear. That's
They say
to wear.
for to wear. That's right. And do you know the reason for that? Do you remember when we were learning about VOT, voice onset time? So you know that it's different in a lot of the Romance languages from English. In English, we have a lot of aspiration with voiceless stops, right? So do and to, we've got a lot of aspiration. Not as much as Mandarin, but a lot. But in Romance languages, they mostly don't have that much aspiration. Either no aspiration or just a tiny bit. French is the same, and Spanish is the same. The voice stops are very voiced, so it would be dare or something like that. And then da for the T sound with no aspiration. So they very easily bring that over into English. So that's a good observation. Good. Okay? That's good. Very good. Okay? Next. Miranda?
I went to my grandmother's house this winter vacation, and I found out that when my parents talk to our relatives, they have heavy code mixing of Southern Ming and Chinese. And
Mandarin. We should say Mandarin. Actually, by the way, Southern Ming is Chinese. Whatever the politicians tell you, Southern Ming is a variety of Chinese. And so that's why it really bothers me when they say 中文, 中国, and they're talking only about 大陆, and they're talking about 国语. So keep in mind, Southern Ming is a variety of Chinese. And in Chinese, we make it clear by saying Hanyu. It's not popular in Taiwan. That's what they say in China. But in Chinese studies, we usually say Hanyu. Often it refers to Mandarin, but it also refers to all of the dialects as well. I just wanted to clarify that because it's become very politically correct now to say 中国 when you're talking about 大陆. In the past, we said 大陆, right? But now, 相隔开来, we don't belong to them. It's a very sensitive political issue, and it's become popular. Just keep in mind that all of these dialects are varieties of Chinese. But thank you. Yeah, go ahead. So they mix Southern Ming and Mandarin.
And I actually recorded and counted the times, and I found that there are about a dozen times per minute.
Wow.
I guess it's because sometimes there are words that they don't have the Southern Ming version, like
巨蛋.
So they have to use Chinese, and they will
Mandarin, yeah.
Mandarin and continue to use Mandarin until they finish the sentence.
You see that in 连续剧 way back in the years when I used to watch this stuff. For example, 玩具, they use Mandarin. 整个都是闽南语的连续剧, but they say 玩具. So that's an example. Do you have any examples offhand?
Like some names,
Okay.
like Fu Yixuan and people's names.
Names, that's an interesting one. That gets very established in Mandarin. Anything else you can think of?
More modern things like 高清电视, something like
Okay, yeah. Modern things. Okay, good.
And the second observation is that I found there are different accents in southern and northern Taiwan. In southern Ming, like 没有. In northern people say bo, and southern people say bo. The vowel is different. And
Can I ask you something about your own 闽南语？芋头跟那个 oysters.
鹅啊,
So you distinguish them clearly. Not everybody does. Is there anybody who does not distinguish them clearly? Some people say oa for both of them. 你每个人都会分吗？
In Kaohsiung,
I would say 高雄. We still say 高雄.
in Kaohsiung,
Yeah.
for the oyster, we say ea and oa.
Okay, so it gets mixed.
Yes.
Anybody else? Because I've seen a lot of people made fun of because they said 蚵仔煎. 蚵仔煎. I've seen a lot of people being made fun of for their incorrect pronunciation. Okay, but you distinguish them clearly. Good. Okay?
And also I found some usage like I say some in southern Ming as 不离呀, 伊走了不离呀紧. 伊走了真紧, 伊走了不离呀紧.
不了解.
不离呀.
That means 有
But
一
many
点
people doesn't know that.
like a lot of people here.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard it before. 不了解.
Maybe because my mother is from Yilan. I don't know
Yilan.
if that's.
You know it. Okay, so do you use it or you just understand it?
I understand it. My grandmother says that it's faster than a little faster, but not so fast.
Okay. Okay. Quite. Yeah. Very good. It seems like we're getting some interesting 语料 from Jinmen and Yilan. Yeah, also from Kaohsiung. Okay. Anything else?
The last observation is quite funny. We are playing a smartphone at home, and we are testing the 语音系统. There's a Google search, and you can speak to your phone, and it'll search for you, so you don't have to type.
It's called ASR, Automatic Speech Recognition. ASR, Automatic Speech Recognition. We're going to learn about that this semester. ASR. Okay? Or you can just say voice recognition. Okay?
And we, my mother tested it and tested it, and she said, 中烘, the coffee. 咖啡的中烘, 重烘, 烘焙, 中烘.
So it's a dark roast?
Yes.
A dark roast.
Yeah. And the Google came out like 中风.
That's what I thought it was the first time.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite smart that it can.
它一定是出那个
Yeah.
台湾国语的不标准的国语 ，That was pretty good。然后中风频率还蛮高的，比中轰还要高。That's a really good one。好厉害哦，被训练过。Good, that's it. Thank you. Okay.
I'm Tina. In winter vacation, I went to Kaohsiung, and I also found a very interesting pronunciation of a station in Kaohsiung MRT, 凹子底. And in southern Ming.
Southern, everybody southern. Southern, yeah. It's south, but the adjective is southern.
In southern Ming, it is called Labade. In Haga, it is called La Bedai.
Okay.
The second one is
Do you know the origin of it? It sounds like a 原住民 name.
No, it's a old name of the of some region in Kaohsiung, and it was because that it was altitude.
Uh-huh.
It's lower， 就是它的地势比周遭还要低，
Right.
跟比较低，所以它拉巴地
Uh-huh.
凹下去。
Okay, it's not 原住民. It sounds kind of 原住民 to me. Okay, good. Thank you.
the second one is when my mom say 芋头
Says.
says 芋头 she says 鱼头
鱼头. Okay.
And the third one is I heard different pronunciation of 关 in Southern Ming 关公 is called 关公 but 关渡 is called 干刀
Okay.
干刀
或是
干刀.
干刀
关东是台北说，像高雄那边都是关大门，
How do you say it in Kaohsiung?
关大门，
这么长?
关大门，
Oh, say it once more.
关大门。
Okay, got it. Thank you. And when you're giving me examples, you have to slow down. Sorry. Okay, very good. All very interesting. Okay, now, Jerome.
Because I live, my home is in Kaohsiung, and
Please say Kaohsiung.
my home is in Kaohsiung.
Yeah.
And the people around me, usually they're used to speak.
Used to speaking.
Used to speaking Southern Ming, or the so-called 外省腔. Yes, and 就是外省腔的中文. And I found that it's the tone of the so-called 外省腔中文. Is similar to Taiwanese Mandarin, but it doesn't sound like Beijing Mandarin.
Right.
It's like it's very hard to explain the difference, because 就是它是一个印象，就是你听到两种不同的说法，你会觉得哦，这是外省人，那个是大陆人。
Right, that's right. So I think what you're saying is that they speak a more educated kind of Mandarin. They have a higher level of education, and it shows in their Mandarin. So when they speak, they sound like they're a Waishengren of Taiwan.
Yes.
In the Zhong family, they grew up in a Zhencun. They also have their own special kind of Mandarin. So when I say things that the class doesn't understand, that's usually where they came from. For example, 开阳婚, 已经讲过了. But that isn't necessarily just from the Zhencun, but they have a lot of mainland influence, pronunciations, and expressions. That when you hear somebody talk, you know they probably grew up in a Zhencun. And you're saying that your friends, they speak, it sounds like a more northern kind of, more educated kind of Mandarin, not what you'd expect from somebody in Kaohsiung. That's, what sub-area of linguistics is that we're talking about?
Is that social linguistics?
Yes, social linguistics. That's a really interesting topic for social linguistics. And there's a researcher who's looked into, he mainly is interested in the Zhencun Guoyu, but he's also interested in how we define Taiwan Mandarin. His name is He Wanshun. 如何的何, 一万两万的万, 顺利的顺, He Wanshun. He's a very, very good friend of mine. He looks into things like that. So if you're interested in this, you can look him up and find some of his papers. Okay, good.
And as for 开阳婚, I asked my mother and my aunt. They said that in Kaohsiung or in southern Taiwan, they usually use it to refer to the action of having a foreign boyfriend or girlfriend.
Really? That's a new meaning. That's really interesting. It's 延伸出来的. Yeah.
I think the words may be written not the same. It sounds the same, but it may use the different words.
Which words? Which ones would you write?
The 阳 will be 西洋的洋。
本来就是西洋的洋啊。本来就是西洋的洋。
I thought 阳光的阳。
No, 它就是西洋的洋。As far as I know, that's what I've always assumed, unless I'm wrong, somebody check.
I heard my grandmother say 鬼油车, and it means the same as what Miss Zhong told us.
Can you say it slowly, please?
鬼油车.
Oh, okay. 车 just 车操 No, 不是。
车 means 婚.
Oh, okay. Very interesting.
车就是婚事，假车.
So they have that expression in 闽南语.
Yes.
Okay, good.
And and because all the people in my family speaks, they're used to speaking Southern Ming. So I found that their 支持时日 is disappearing, and instead they may say 支持时了. So 这样 would be 这样, and 好热 would be 好热.
I think we discussed it a little bit last semester. This has been a really popular topic. People have been watching this for years. The thing is, it's not that it's disappearing. I don't think it was ever there. 它从来没有. Only in schools. Because when they first started promoting Mandarin in Taiwan, they did not have teachers from Beijing in most cases. So they were people from all over China, and they spoke a not so pure variety of Mandarin. They call it what? Lanqing Guanhua. Lanqing Guanhua. And so I don't think Taiwan ever had 支持时, 它上了没有. So it's not that it's disappearing. It was never there. This is my opinion, my observation. 因为一开始推行国语的时候，就不是那个北京人在推行了。As for 乐, I think that's a sound change. That's definitely coming. Yeah, 好乐. And yeah, 好乐 and 吃肉 and things like that. But the interesting thing about that is it's not completely gone, because if you really say 滋吃丝 so strongly, 就是完全不分, people notice. At least in the north. I can't speak for the south. I haven't lived there. But if you really, for example, 这样要这样吃啊，老师。没有人说老师. People say 老师. They don't say 老师, but they don't say 老师. It's in between, and people have written papers about it. In fact, I have one paper that also mentions it. So 2 points. Number one, I think it was never there in Taiwan Mandarin. It was never there, except in theory and in schools. And number two is it's not completely gone either, because if you go all the way to 滋滋滋, 听起来真的很土. 然后有时候也会听不懂, because once I got the word wrong. It was my own Mandarin mistake, a foreigner mistake. I said 厨师, and suddenly the students just, what'd you say? 厨师? Oh, 厨师. 厨师老师的师. 对. So I made a mistake. It was a foreigner mistake. And they didn't understand when I said 师 instead of 师. So the thing is that it's still halfway there. But there is definitely change going on, especially 日 for 乐. I think that's getting really common. Okay.
And about the nasalization of the vowel I mentioned last semester in 其他 and 手怕, I asked people around me, and I found almost everyone say 其他 with a nasalized vowel. But my mother says 手怕, she doesn't nasalize it, and my aunt nasalize it. So I think for 其他 it's because it's influenced by Southern Ming, because we say guitar, we use a nasalized vowel in Southern Ming. But for other words, I still cannot figure out why some people nasalize the vowel, but some people don't.
It's another good social linguistic topic. That's a really interesting topic. I haven't seen anybody write about it. So if you want to do a paper, if you want to go to grad school in linguistics or something like that, you can develop that, start collecting data, because you were the one who started, sharing your observations with us. I did also listen. I also went to the south. I went to Dongbu and Nanbu during vacation, and I listened a lot to my son and his girlfriend and her family. And both my son and his girlfriend say 他, both of them. They're now about 30岁. Yeah. So my son has it too. Okay. Yeah. So that's interesting, but nobody mentioned 手帕, so I don't know about that one. I'll have to ask.
I don't know if it's individual segments, because for me, I said 手帕 and 大人.
大人.
Yes,
Really? I don't think we have that, but everybody start paying attention to nasals on those words. It's 韵母. Yeah.
But I use nasalized vowel in some tones, only in some tones, because I said 答应. I don't say 答应.
Good.
答应, but I say 大人.
Okay. So you say 大, you have a non-nasal vowel
Yes.
there. Okay. You were going to say?
We have nasal vowel in 害怕. But in 怕 we have nasal one.
You mentioned that before last semester. 怕.
Yes, 害怕.
Yeah.
But I know, but some of the people just don't nasalize all the vowels in Mandarin without if the vowel isn't with nasalized isn't with a nasal consonant.
Okay. Please look into that. Yeah. You keep collecting data. Do you have anything else?
And for the 连续剧 in Taiwan now, well, recent years they like to mix Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, Taiwanese, and English. So
How about Japanese?
no, they don't really mix Japanese, but they like to mix English with Taiwanese to show that someone came back from another country. So they might say any 帮我 check 一下 schedule, something like that.
Yeah, okay. Good. And this is sort of 偏离了一点点, but I find that for code mixing in Taiwan, you'll find that a lot of papers and texts will tell you that code mixing is usually for content words, for new objects. Like with 闽南语, we said 新的东西, 比较现代的东西. But I find that in Taiwan, you code mix with a lot of function words. Okay? Either 你跟我去, or 你怎么样? Yeah, either, or. Those are function words. Okay? Or and, or. 很多的 function words, people will say them in English. A lot of structure. So that goes against what it says in some books. You can start noticing where code mixing is a really popular topic, but we haven't finished with it yet. So keep observing. Okay, anything else?
I think that's all.
That's excellent. Good. Okay, Amy's already shared with us.
Number one.
Okay, go ahead. Get a second round.
It was in middle school. Either 蹑手蹑脚.
Right.
My mom could only say 内手内脚.
Oh, good.
And then
Interesting.
I tried to correct her, but then she has to concentrate a lot to be able to say 蹑手蹑脚.
She says nay.
内手内脚.
Very good, and that is consistent with the other data. Okay, Carol?
I'm Carol. The first one I collect is already mentioned. It's from my grandmother. She's native language is Taiwanese, so she says 花糕 and 红梨. I think that's very common during New Year, and because my guessing is that because Taiwanese don't have the sounds, so I think that's very common if you want to imitate someone who have the Taiwanese Chinese Mandarin. And the second one is from my dad. His native language is Cantonese.
Okay.
But
Is he from Hong Kong or?
yeah, you can say that. But anyway.
Too complicated. Okay.
Yeah, it's quite complicated.
Okay.
But doesn't matter. He always say 说牙, brushing his teeth, and 说卡.
Oh.
Yeah. 说, it's because it's not 100% retroflex, because as in Taiwan Mandarin we don't have that that back, but it's kind of like between 斯 and 诗. So it's 说牙 and 说卡, and we always make fun of that.
Because it's the same word.
Yeah, it's same, but later I found that it's he also say 捉 instead of 抓, so it's the sounds that he cannot pronounce clearly. And I checked Wikipedia and I found that in Cantonese, if they have a diphthong, the sound is never the second part of the diphthong. So I guess that's a problem. But and later he say 西瓜, oh gosh, it completely ruined my, because he can pronounce that like in 西瓜 and 哇, but when it comes to 说 and 刷 and 抓, he sort of like into the all sounds that we.
So what's the manner of articulation he's having trouble with?
Retroflex, because it's draw and schwa, I guess, because the.
I'm thinking of manner of articulation. I think it's fricatives and affricates, right? Sh and j, fricatives and affricates, because the stop seems to be okay. Gua, that's a stop, but fricatives and affricates, he's having problems, I guess, right? Yeah, that's interesting. How does he say things like 凉快的凉? Is it normal?
Yeah, I think, or maybe because I'm so used to it.
Or 聊, like 聊, 骨聊, 那个聊. They will say things like 聊, or like. It's hard for me to
I don't think my dad had such a strong accent,
Cantonese accent,
because he's been living in Taiwan for more than 30 years, so it sounds actually okay, but only a
couple words.
Yeah, a couple of words that, well, like show his real identity.
That itself is an interesting idea that I haven't seen explored much in the literature, that we can also keep our eyes and ears open for, and that is that a lot of times we all just have little markers that are different from everybody else. Everybody has these idiosyncrasies, because I notice it in my own speech. There are a couple things where I show that I'm from Minnesota, and I can't come up with a good example right now, but there's some funny things about the way I talk, but just a couple here and there. The rest of it is pretty standard Midwestern English. But in myself and anybody else, usually there are just like 2 or 3 things that are a little odd, which is a little reassuring that at least we have some individuality. We're not all exactly the same when we speak. But very often, I've noticed that because I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and there's a big difference between professional readers and actors who read audiobooks, 就是有声书, and the volunteers. Mostly I listen to volunteers because they're free. Online, on LibriVox, 这是免费的. But everybody has something odd about their English, every single reader, because they're not professionals. But when I listen to the professionals, all of that has been smoothed over and homogenized. 全部都统一化了，就听不出什么特色 unless 除非是装的. So that made me think, just from listening to audiobooks, that all of us have something a little funny about our native language, which is interesting. Somebody should study that. This little area that is not quite sucked in by the mainstream, if you see what I mean. What I was trying to say about liao is they say something like liao, liao, or yeah. It just sounds really funny, and I notice it in most Cantonese speakers in Taiwan who speak Mandarin very well, but you hear it in liao. 它就是那个 ao 会变 ao, 怪怪的. Maybe not your father. That's yeah. 客家人可能也是那边有点怪怪的. Right. Okay, anything else?
Yes. The third one, I don't know how to categorize it, but it's my uncle. He's a very good swimmer, but he always say 游泳.
游泳,
Yeah.
He's not Hakka. Right?
No.
Okay. We were talking about that on our trip, actually.
I don't know why, but I think because the second word 泳 is kind of lip rounding, so he has this U.
Is that the only word he does it with? How does he say, for example, 优秀?
I have another data is that he say 游览车.
Okay.
And
but that's still the same word.
Yeah, it's very strange. And later I found that he say 猪油, and it's normal again. I think if the yo is at the beginning of a phrase, it's you, but if it's at the end, like 橄榄油 and 猪油,
These
you
are all
pronounce
just-
it quite okay.
These are all just conjectures now. We're guessing. We're making up theories. You can write them down and then see what you find. We were talking about this U sound on the trip. But actually in Mandarin, there's different vowels for the first two tones from the second two tones. So actually it's liu, 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 in theory. In Taiwan, you maybe don't follow it strictly, but it should be you, or liu, 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 liu. 六跟六会比较偏向 you， 然后第一声、第二声比较偏向 you。所以 that's part of it. I think it's related, but he's not consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you need to look into it more and find out what it is. I mean, what you have is a theory, but we need more evidence. Okay. Good. Anything else?
I think that's all.
That's excellent. Good. Okay. Yumi.
I'm Yumi, and this winter break I went to Tainan, and I found some different accents in Taiwanese. So that means that are different from my family. And in Tainan, some people will say 丢了, 丢, 丢了.
With the falling tone, you mean?
Yeah, but in my family we say 丢.
It has a middle tone.
Middle tone.
So
And
丢 with a fourth
丢.
falling tone. Yeah.
And there's a little child. She went to Thailand with our family, and I found that she can't distinguish b and p. Like she will say 好几片, not 好几遍.
How old is she?
About it's already 7 years old.
7.
Yeah.
Wow.
But she can't distinguish, and I try to say 好几遍, not 好几片, but she still say 好几片.
So now it's probably become a habit, and it's going to be hard to change. Because you know, habit is what's hard to change. It's habit. It's not the sound. She can, just like the 内手内脚. Whose was that? That was yours. She can do it when she thinks. 她只要专心, then she can say 蹑手蹑脚. But to change the habit is really, really hard. How about other sounds? Is it just a few, or is she consistent?
Like a 大便, she will say 大片.
Really? Okay. Anything else?
Yes, and also in
Because they're both pian. It's both the same syllable.
Yeah, but other things, no, I didn't hear.
If you get the chance, try to observe, because it may be just bien, 这个 syllable. Did you find it with any other initials like de and te or anything like that? Or ge and he?
Only
Ke.
Ke and
Okay, how interesting.
Ke. And one of my friends from Beijing, that some words like he will say the 小点声, but like in Taiwan we say 小声点.
Okay, so that's a grammatical difference.
Yeah.
That's something we would just not say in Taiwan.
And
小点声.
like something that many things, and he will say 多的去了, and we'll say 很多, but he will say 多的去了.
Wow, I haven't heard that one before either.
多的去了,
Uh-huh.
多的去了.
Okay.
And the last one that one of my friends, he said when
Said?
he said when we altering the retroflex complements in Chinese like 支持师, and most people will have their tiptoes still stay curled back after they pronounce 支持师.
For example.
And 支持师, I mean the tiptoes will still stay curled.
Okay.
But he said he would just, it will stay flat.
Okay, so 支持师. But like I said,
But it's still heard like 支持师.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's what we just discussed that earlier. It's close to the English 支持, like 这 and 这, like church and judge. It's close, except we have rounding and you don't have rounding. Otherwise, I think it's quite close. Good. Anything else?
That's it.
That's excellent. Did everybody get a chance? Anybody think of something suddenly? It just came to you. Yeah. Okay, Wendy? Okay, our time's about up.
Okay, I don't know whether it's only happened to my mom or other people. When she was trying to speak English, she tends to like adding R on every word.
That's a good point. I've noticed that in certain people, and one of them is an English teacher. Yeah, and she does that all the time. It's like she's trying to sound very American, putting those R's there, and they put them in the wrong place.
Because when my sister and I went to English kind of school, she went there with us every class, and I guess it may be, she may think that adding R sounds more like American people.
Yes.
And the second one is 语助词, because when my mom and my family, my mom, my sister and I went back to Tainan, my mom's 娘家, and my cousin will say, can I speak in
Yeah.
Chinese in more faster? 就是我们会很，通常我们都会加一些语助词在一个句子后面。然后我妈妈是从台南嫁到台中，然后她在台中住了20年。然后我姐姐就给我取了一个名叫，我们叫嘿嘿家族，就我们会在每一个句子后面加一个嘿。就是说我们要去吃饭了哦，然后不然就是记得吃早餐嘿。就会把每一个句子后面加一个嘿，可是我们在就是台南人不会这么讲，所以我表姐就把我取一个名叫嘿嘿家族。
Oh, so it's sort of like a family idiolect thing. It's just something your family has.
对，因为我的叔叔、我的阿姨还有舅舅，他们全部都是娶台南人跟嫁给台南人，然后只有妈妈是嫁到台中。所以只有我们家讲话跟别人不一样，所以我们会在语助词的用法就是跟有地区差异。
That's very interesting. Maybe all of you have something special in your family that you only say in your family and you don't, hear otherwise. I mean, we have a lot of things in the family that I grew up with that we call them Stephanisms, things that we only say in our family. To give somebody schimpf means 就是骂人家. And it comes from German schimpfen. So a lot of the things in our family actually come from German because my father spoke German before he spoke English. This is really interesting. We didn't get to our textbook. We will next time. And by next time, make sure that you have the book. And your first assignment is chapter 1. So as soon as you get your book, read chapter 1, take notes as you're reading, and then make a summary of it, 2 questions to be handed in the Wednesday after this coming Wednesday. And is there anything else we need to be reminded of here? Let's see. Yeah, start reading also in the course because we're going to read in class. And there was something that I saw in the final evaluations for this class. A number of people mentioned this, and they were actually a bit angry. And they said, and it's something I've noticed too because I'm reviewing the DVDs for this class. To say if, 我说错的时候, I like them to take it out. But I repeat myself a lot. I repeated things a lot. And some people were angry about that. They said, why don't the people who get corrected learn it so you don't have to repeat the same thing over and over again? I would be happy to not repeat it. I would be really, really pleased not to repeat it. But if you keep making the same mistakes like says and said instead of says and said, everybody, and change instead of change. You can see somebody nodding in the class. We know where one of those comments came from. If you learn them and you remember them when you're reading, I'm not going to waste 15 minutes going over the same thing. I just listened to that DVD. How come it's here again? Because somebody made a mistake while reading and then I went to Tampian Dalun again. Now, I would prefer not to do that, but unless you change, what can I do? So I want you all to think about that. The way to avoid it is make sure that you make the changes that we talk about in class. Prepare your reading ahead of time. Like prepare 2 or 3 pages of chapter 6 before class. When it's your turn, you won't say change. And then Amy will go, 又来了. Okay? Got it? You guys need to make some permanent changes. Otherwise, we're going to waste a lot of time going over old material again and again and again. And it won't hurt the listeners if they're Taiwanese, because they probably need to be reminded, but it really does take up class time. Okay, any comments, questions before we dismiss class? That's it. We'll see you on Wednesday.